Jerusalem, Passover, a time of great significance and deep tradition, a city alive with anticipation, a city eagerly awaiting the arrival of the Messiah. Hope hung in the air, thick as the smell of lamb roasting on open fires, mingling with the sounds of bustling markets. But this year, fear was a bitter spice in the air, a shadow over the festivities. Roman soldiers patrolled the streets with an iron grip, their presence a constant reminder of their power and control. The Passover festival, a time for families to reunite, to come together in celebration, a time to remember their deliverance from slavery, to honor their ancestors. But this year, whispers of a different kind of liberation spread through the crowded streets, carried on the wind, whispers about a Nazarene rabbi, a miracle worker, a man named Jesus, whose words stirred the hearts of many. He'd ridden into Jerusalem on a donkey, hailed as king by the common people, a symbol of peace and humility. His message of love and forgiveness resonated deeply with the poor and the oppressed, offering them hope. But it threatened the established order, the power structures that had long been in place. The Pharisees and the Sadducees, the religious leaders, saw him as a threat, a blasphemer. Their fear festered and grew. It grew into a plot. They would silence him, stop his message from spreading. Before his message could spread any further, they conspired in secret. Little did they know, their actions would change the course of history forever, leaving an indelible mark on the world. The night was thick with betrayal, a darkness that seemed to seep into the very soul of the world. Judas, one of Jesus' own disciples, led the temple guards to him, his heart heavy with the weight of his actions. A kiss, the symbol of love, became the mark of treachery. Jesus was arrested, his fate sealed with a gesture meant for affection. He was dragged before the Sanhedrin, the Jewish high court. False accusations flew like arrows. They twisted his words, turning truth into lies. They condemned him for blasphemy, a charge that carried the weight of death. But Jesus, he stood tall. He knew his purpose. He remained silent, a calm in the storm of accusations. Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor, was a practical man, caught between justice and the will of the people. He saw no fault in Jesus, recognizing the innocence in his eyes. But the crowds, whipped into a frenzy by the priests, they demanded blood, their cries echoing through the halls. Pilate washed his hands of the matter, literally, a symbolic gesture of his attempt to absolve himself of guilt. He handed Jesus over to be crucified. The sentence was death, a brutal, agonizing death, one that would be remembered for centuries, the weight of the world about to fall on one man's shoulders, a burden that would change the course of history. The Via Dolorosa, the Way of Sorrows, a road etched in history with the blood and tears of the condemned. Jesus, stripped and beaten, struggled under the weight of the cross. The crowds that had hailed him as king just days before now watched in morbid curiosity. Some jeered, some spat, some wept openly. The air crackled with tension, with anticipation of the gruesome spectacle to come. Golgotha, the skull, a hill outside Jerusalem, a place of public execution. Here on this hill, under the scorching desert sun, 3 crosses awaited, one of them for the Son of God. Section 4, the price of choice. 2 other men were being crucified that day, common criminals, thieves, they say. Their lives had been marked by poor choices and misdeeds. Their crimes insignificant in the shadow of the man in the middle, the man who bore the weight of the world's sins. Their names lost to history, but their stories forever intertwined with that of Jesus. Their final moments a testament to the choices they made. One thief, hardened by a life of crime. He railed against Jesus, mocked him. His heart filled with resentment, challenged him to save himself and them if he was truly the Son of God. His words, dripping with scorn and disbelief, he clung to his anger, his bitterness, his despair. He chose darkness, his soul consumed by his own choices. The other thief, he saw something different, a light in the midst of darkness. Perhaps it was the peace in Jesus' eyes amidst the suffering, a peace that transcended the pain. Perhaps it was the quiet dignity he carried, a dignity that spoke of a higher purpose. Whatever it was, it sparked something in his own heart, a flicker of hope, a glimmer of faith. In his final moments, he chose to believe. He chose light over darkness. Section 5. A King's Forgiveness. Lord, the repentant thief rasped, his voice hoarse with pain and thirst. Remember me when you come into your kingdom. A simple request, an acknowledgement of Jesus' true nature, an act of faith in the face of death. Jesus turned his head, his eyes filled with a love that transcended the agony of the cross. "Truly I say to you," he said, his voice weak but steady, "today you will be with me in paradise." Forgiveness, offered freely, even in the final moments of life. Hope, extended to a soul on the brink of eternity. The promise of paradise, not just a distant heaven but a state of being, of closeness to God.